Final Fantasy IX can easily be considered a classic and amongst the peak JRPGs on the original PlayStation. This game didn't just have a captivating world to explore, it was a world that felt like a living fairy tale, rich with wonder and mystery. Every cobbled street in Alexandria, every mist-shrouded valley in Gaia, and every ancient ruin hidden away in the corners of the map felt as though they held secrets just waiting to be discovered. But like with all of the most immersive games, what made Final Fantasy IX truly special was how it always felt like there was more to uncover. Even now, decades later, fans are still unearthing new details, hidden interactions, obscure development plans, and cut content that hint at a grander vision that was never fully realised. Today, we're diving deep into those mysteries, exploring not only the secrets we were never meant to find out about, but also the content that's been left behind. From inaccessible locations buried within the game's code to plot lines that were altered or scrapped entirely, Final Fantasy IX is filled with lost treasure that continues to captivate players to this day. So in this upload, we spotlight some of the most intriguing of them all. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here. If you love Final Fantasy history, subscribe, because this is the mysterious lost content of Final Fantasy IX. Yeah! In Final Fantasy IX, there is no traditional job system, like in earlier Final Fantasy games, meaning players cannot explicitly choose a class for their characters and switch between them. Instead, each character has a defined role based on their abilities and skill set, allowing for character customization through equipping specific weapons, armor, and learning abilities as they progress, effectively acting as a more fluid and integrated form of class progression rather than as distinct job classes, i.e. Steiner is a knight, Vivi is a black mage, etc. However, what if I told you things were not always intended this way? These very early concept art design images, for example, feature sketches of unknown characters with different job roles in the game, including a light magician, elemental user, Viking, and dragoon. The latter depicts a dark knight, scholar, archer, and bard. Some of these designs by Toshiyuki Itahana look drastically different from the final playable cast, hinting that Final Fantasy IX may have originally been intended as a game where characters could change jobs, similar to other entries in the series. This could have very well been the case, particularly when we take into account that even some NPCs have jobs. Customizable job system or not though, I love this game. And do you know what's even better? That by using my link you can get a massive 66% off the usual price and enjoy it right now. So whether you're a fan of the classics from the original PlayStation age, or you're diving into the latest masterpieces like Final Fantasy XVI or Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, there's no denying this franchise is one of the greatest of all time, and using my affiliate links you can save money on all of them, as well as up to 90% off of other titles too. Don't miss out on your chance to build the ultimate Final Fantasy collection for next to nothing, and grab these deals before they disappear. Happy shopping, and I hope you enjoy learning about more cut content. When I first played this game at release, I absolutely adored the colourful lineup of playable characters. While the core party members were all fantastic, I also found some of the temporary party members particularly intriguing. Playing as Beatrix for the first time felt like a revelation, and seeing Marcus and Blank return later in the story was an unexpected surprise. However, out of all of the characters we got to control, the one who received the least love was Cena. Not to be confused with an invisible wrestler by the same name, Cena is a minor but memorable character in Final Fantasy IX, serving as one of the members of Tantalus, the theatre troupe guild led by Baku. He's easily recognisable by his scruffy brown beard, red bandana, and obsession with his prized Garnet toy, which he treats with near reverence. Cena plays more of a comic relief role within the group, often coming across as bumbling and somewhat lazy compared to his more competent companions. As for the time players actually get to control him, it's incredibly brief. Cena is playable only during the game's opening segment in Alexandria, where Tantalus kidnaps Princess Garnet. During this time, the player can control him for a short period, but he has very little combat utility. His stats are weak and he wields a hammer that does minimal damage. His role in battle is largely inconsequential, making him one of the least remarkable playable characters in the game. After this short stint, Cena steps back into a supporting NPC role, occasionally appearing with Tantalus throughout the game. Unlike other contemporary party members like Beatrix or Marcus, who have strong abilities and dramatic moments, Cena's brief playable section feels more like a novelty than a meaningful gameplay addition, but hidden within the game's code is secret Cena content that you probably didn't know about. Cena has both a face portrait and a victory pose, but players never actually get to see them in the game. Insert some kind of John Cena reference here. His time in the party is so short-lived that the menu remains inaccessible, preventing any chance to view his character details. Even more curiously, the battle he takes part in never plays out like standard encounters, so rather than ending with the usual victory screen, it simply fades to black, almost as if erasing any trace of his brief moment in the spotlight. It's almost like the game itself knew no one was clamouring for the legend of Cena, the lost victory pose, but hey ho, it's a thing apparently. Speaking of content tucked away on Final Fantasy IX's game discs, one particularly interesting discovery from the cutting room floor is an unused animated pre-rendered background within Lindblum Castle. This background showcases a hallway with a set of stairs that function like an escalator, continuously moving in a mechanical fashion. However, in the final game, these stairs are completely static, suggesting that the developers may have originally planned for some form of automated movement within the castle's design. The presence of this unused asset raises some intriguing questions, but whatever the case, this small detail offers a glimpse into the kind of ideas that were considered but ultimately left on, to excuse the pun, cutting room floor. They also highlight that some of the enemy textures in the game contain hidden drawings, a detail that remains unseen during normal gameplay, that were never meant to be seen, or simply a result of repurposing assets during development. Whatever the reason, these hidden drawings add yet another layer of intrigue to Final Fantasy IX. The Moogle dialogue menu originally had extra entries that were removed when the script was executed. An unfiltered version of the menu reveals a hidden debug option, but selecting it has no effect, suggesting it was either disabled or left unfinished during development. This unused entry hints at possible debugging functions that were once accessible to developers but ultimately scrapped before the final release. But wait, there's more. During Disc 3, when players returned to Alexandria, there was originally a balloon-related minigame planned, but it was ultimately cut from the final release. This minigame involved a group of 3 girls holding balloons near the ticket stand from the beginning of the game. The objective was simple: find the girls on the screen, take their balloons, and return them to a little boy waiting at the minigame starting point. Interestingly, while this feature never made it into standard gameplay, it wasn't completely erased. The entire minigame still exists within the game's data and can be reactivated through hacking, meaning it was likely fully functional before being scrapped. On top of all of this, throughout Final Fantasy IX, there are several hidden dialogues and scenes that, while fully functional, never made it into the final game either. A fan-made patch has since restored these lost moments, giving players the chance to experience them as they were originally scripted. One of the earliest cut dialogues occurs in Disc 1, when Puck and Vivi are making their way across Alexandria's rooftops to watch the play. Puck casually asks Vivi about his first time in the city, leading to a short exchange where Vivi reveals he bought his ticket from a Moogle wearing a hat, implying he may have been scammed. Puck reacts with characteristic bravado, vowing to punish the Moogle if he ever finds him. Though minor, this scene would have added a little extra personality to both characters and foreshadowed Vivi's constant streak of bad luck. Another significant omission happens in the ruined Prima Vista, where Zidane originally had the option to abandon his search for Garnet. Choosing to forget it would trigger a unique scene where Zidane, lying on his bed with Vivi nearby, struggles with his feelings. As the scene fades, Garnet appears running through the darkness in an eerie, dreamlike sequence. The scene's surreal nature suggests an internal conflict for Zidane, but without it, his decision to chase after Garnet lacks some of the emotional weight that this moment could have provided. In an unused active time event titled Steiner's Bitterness, the knight expresses his growing frustration and anger towards Zidane's crew after their kidnapping of Princess Garnet. His fury builds through 3 separate lines, reinforcing his unwavering sense of duty and disdain for the thieves. Some cut dialogue also hints at deeper political themes, such as an exchange between Steiner and Morid in Observatory Mountain near Dali. Steiner staunchly blames Bermesia for starting the war that cost Alexandria its king, but Morid challenges him by pointing out Alexandria's own history of aggression. This conversation would have added more nuance to Steiner's character, showing his struggle between blind loyalty and the harsh realities of war. Another cut interaction in Gizmaluke's grotto provides extra dialogue if players enter before Bermesia is attacked. 2 Bermesian soldiers guard the entrance, explaining that no one is allowed in without the king's permission. While not groundbreaking, this line adds a sense of continuity, reinforcing Bermesia's status before its eventual downfall. On Disc 2, an unused ATE titled The Treetop Town of Clayra sheds light on Freya's reunion with the King of Bermesia. In this exchange, the king acknowledges past mistakes and pleads for Freya's forgiveness, though he admits he may not deserve it. This scene would have deepened the emotional weight of Bermuda's destruction, adding more gravitas to Freya's personal struggles. Another lost moment involves Rama at Pinnacle Rocks. Originally, before starting his trial, he was meant to give a longer speech about serving the master and testing the player's worth. Dagger, Zidane, and Vivi briefly discussed their journey, showing how much they have learned about summon magic since witnessing Clayra's destruction. A stealth sequence also appears to have been cut from occupied Lindblum's castle in Disc 2. Originally, Zidane was supposed to sneak past an Alexandrian soldier while being guided by one of Sid's men. At one point, the soldier notices his tail, prompting Zidane to meow like a cat to avoid detection. This setup mirrors the Hedgehog Pie stealth section in Disc 3, meaning the developers likely intended for multiple similar sequences throughout the game. One particularly intriguing omission comes when Regent Sid hands Zidane the world map. Sid originally explained that the map was an ancient artifact passed down through Lindblum's ruling family since before the mist covered the continent. This suggests that Gaia's history before the Mist Era was meant to be explored further, possibly hinting at lost civilizations or past conflicts that were never fully fleshed out in the final game, which could have been nice additions in my opinion, as leaving the continent was one of the most intriguing parts of the game. Finally, a chilling alternate game over message exists in Disc 4, showing what would have happened if the party failed to stop the Lifer Tree. Instead of a standard game over screen, a haunted message describes the catastrophic fusion of Gaia and Terra, causing global chaos, the destruction of cities, and the loss of countless lives. All of these hidden dialogues and scenes paint a picture of a richer, more detailed Final Fantasy IX, one where character motivations, world building and emotional moments were given even more attention, but there is far more cut ideas and content than what can simply be found hidden on the discs. When Final Fantasy IX first came out, I loved the look of this game from the start. However, when talking to school friends at the time, I quickly realised that not everyone shared my enthusiasm. Many of them were still caught up in the futuristic, edgier aesthetics of Final Fantasy 7 and 8, and they dismissed 9 as looking too childish in comparison. Yeah, some of you might argue that Final Fantasy 9 was a return to the series' classic fantasy roots, but the problem was that, in the UK, and many other regions, there was no nostalgia for this style, as mainline Final Fantasy games hadn't even been released here until 7. In fact, even among those who had played the older entries elsewhere, there were detractors who felt that the shift in art style was a step backwards rather than a deliberate homage. So what if I told you plans at one point did exist to deliver a Final Fantasy IX which was more in line with the other PS1 games? In an old IGN interview posted on September the 21st in the year 2000, titled The Final Fantasy IX Team Spills All, the game's art director Hideo Minaba, director Hiroyuki Ito, and composer Nobu Uematsu explained that the idea originally was for character models to look more similar to the ones featured in Final Fantasy VIII. Art director Minaba commented that they were thinking that since the characters in 8 were normal sized, they should make them even taller for Final Fantasy IX. This is an interesting revelation, as it highlights just how different Final Fantasy IX could have been. Given how strongly the game leans into a whimsical fairy tale aesthetic, it's surprising to think that the original plan was to push for more realistic character proportions even further than with Final Fantasy VIII. Minaba adds though that because this was the last single-digit Final Fantasy, they wanted to give the feeling of a series watershed, a sort of grand collection of what had come before. Also, since the Black Mage known as Vivi is a key character in the game, part of the world design was centered on him. These two things had a great influence on Final Fantasy IX's world design. The team also felt that after two back-to-back futuristic settings in Final Fantasy 7 and 8, plus the upcoming Final Fantasy Spirits Within movie, there was a risk of the series becoming visually stagnant. By embracing a more traditional fantasy world, they ensured that 9 would stand apart from its immediate predecessors rather than feeling like more of the same. But this shift in art direction wasn't without its concerns, particularly when it came to how international audiences would react to the return of more stylized, super deformed character designs. As Uematsu explained, the team wanted the visuals to fit the scenario, believing that even with the technology available at the time, a more comic-like approach could still achieve a sense of realism. Aoki acknowledged that the move back to a fantasy-driven aesthetic was a bold one, but argued that the exaggerated character designs ultimately made them more relatable and familiar to players as they progressed through the story. Minaba admitted that there was initial hesitation, given that Final Fantasy VIII had embraced more realistic proportioned characters. The original plan was to push that realism even further in 9, I guess. It makes you wonder how the alternative direction for the game, with those large realistic character models, would have been received. Would it have resonated more with fans who struggle to accept the shift back to a more exaggerated style, or would it have lost the unique charm that makes 9 stand out today? Ultimately, the decision to embrace a more classic fantasy look gave the game its distinct identity, but this interview shows that it was far from a foregone conclusion. The ending of Final Fantasy IX has long been the subject of speculation, with rumours suggesting that it was altered at the last minute before release. When asked about this, Aoki clarified that while the core concept remained unchanged, the team actually revised the ending a total of 7 times. This suggests that the developers went through significant iterations, likely refining the story's conclusion to ensure it had the right emotional impact and fit the game's themes. The fact that it was reworked so many times highlights just how much care and consideration went into delivering a satisfying resolution to Zidane and Garnet's journey, which in my opinion really paid off. A long-standing question about Final Fantasy IX concerns its use of random encounters rather than visible, avoidable enemies like those in Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross. When asked why the Final Fantasy series hadn't adopted this system at the time, Takashi Kurosawa explained that early designs did include on-screen enemies, but this approach came with significant technical trade-offs. The main issue was balancing how much memory was allocated to the game's environments versus the detailed polygon models of enemies. In the end, the team decided that random encounters were a better fit for Final Fantasy IX, as they allowed for more detailed world and battle designs without overloading the PlayStation's hardware. While this decision made sense for Final Fantasy IX, Kurosawa admitted that he couldn't predict whether future titles like Final Fantasy X or 11 would continue using random encounters, leaving room for the series to evolve, which, as history would show us, it eventually did. Over 20 years after the original Final Fantasy IX IGN interview, Aoki, the game's event designer, revisited its development in a PlayStation blog post, shedding even more light on the challenges the team faced to bring this classic to life. One of the biggest hurdles they encountered was the technical limitations of the original PlayStation. With Final Fantasy IX spread across 4 discs, they were constantly pushing the boundaries of what could fit on a CD-ROM. As development neared completion, the team was calculating the data allocation for each disc daily, making difficult decisions to ensure the game remained within the system's storage constraints. If the data exceeded the available space, they would agonise over how to restructure the story across the 4 discs to make everything fit. This issue forced them to make some painful cuts, including a significant one involving visiting 4 shrines. Originally, the plan was for the player to control each party member across all 4 shrine battles, but due to storage limitations, only Zidane and Quina's fight remained playable. In these 4 shrines, we were supposed to take on 4 guardians. The Earth Guardian is the only one of the 4 shrine guardians that the players actually fight as a boss, while the other 3 are defeated off-screen. Interestingly, Kraken is the only one of the 4 that remains completely unseen until the party reaches Memoria. In Memoria, the Guardians of Terra, Malaris, Tiamat, Kraken and Leech serve as bosses, much like their counterparts in the original Final Fantasy. Their battles are triggered by walking through otherwise unmarked areas within the dungeon, adding an element of surprise to each encounter. In the final area, Crystal World, players also face crystalline versions of these 4 foes, further reinforcing their connection to the game's central theme of memory and rebirth. Aside from what has been confirmed by Aoki in the PlayStation blog post, data mining reveals several missing battle formations and monster IDs, suggesting that more encounters were originally planned but removed before release. Notably, 3 missing monster IDs appear near the Earth Guardian's entry, implying that all 4 Shrine Guardians may have once been intended as proper boss fights. This theory is supported by existing concept art for the Unused Guardians, as well as evidence of deleted locations that were likely meant to serve as battle arenas. These findings hint at more elaborate events being planned for the game, just like the ones Aoki outlined. Adding to the team's technical struggles, the crew also had to deal with an unexpectedly shortened development timeline. Instead of the originally planned schedule, they were given 3 months less to finish the game, making the final stretch of development incredibly intense. The pressure to polish Final Fantasy IX in this reduced timeframe made the process even tougher, requiring efficiency and last-minute sacrifices to get the game across the finish line. So Aoki's insight offers a fascinating glimpse into what could have been, alternate gameplay sequences, potentially rich interactions, and the constant battle to balance ambition with technical reality. Final Fantasy IX is no doubt a ground adventure, but it appears if the time and technology on the PS1 had have been there, this could have been an even bigger game. Please kindly leave a like, and don't forget that by using my affiliate link you can get a massive discount on Final Fantasy IX, as well as the newly PC released version of Rebirth, as well as big discounts on thousands of other titles too. Happy shopping, hope you had fun today, and cheerio.